Cheap, cheap, cheap. Cheap, cheap, cheap.
Sure, they could have made some of the aliens look a bit more like headcrabs, etc., but at least the bonus level is GLaDOS.
Previous test subjects have found the best strategy is to keep the fusion power cores in the fusion power core housing, but we're sure you know best.
This is Earth, I guess, and the aliens are attacking it after a long hiatus. But instead of a standing army, we have a bunch of towers, and a long-dormant human consciousness, who in life survived the earlier invasion, but has very little practical advice to give you. Maybe sometimes they'll announce some enemies or give you a bit more information, but surely you can give me some strategy tips. What tower placement would be most effective? I mean something. Yeah, some light-hearted narrative will have to do. It gets more and more depressing as time progresses, and he remembers his past.
But then everyone dies someday, don't they? Maybe even me.
It's surprisingly touching, but apart from that, not much story. Just the sporadic ramblings and fights against feudalism. Strange considering you're trying to save humanity and the only human you have access to is trapped in a machine. Musically, the game has some nice cues, epic victory music. Military parade. And this somber tune that makes the fight feel serious and important. It doesn't have many tracks though. Okay, so good if not plentiful music, and a good story. Or, perhaps more accurately, a minimal amount of story, elevated by the narrator's voice acting, and his descent, and the tunes underscoring the stakes. And that seasoning gets sprinkled over the main meat of the game, the tower defense gameplay. Which is good. The story punches it up, punctuates it, almost perfectly spaces it for when distraction is most welcome. After blowing up a few waves, you have resources, you use those resources to buy towers. Those towers kill the waves of aliens. Classic tower defense. Some towers increase your earnings, some slow the aliens down. Some tower types are good against groups of enemies, and some hammer single strong opponents. And some pick off quick weak enemies, to prevent them from slipping past you. Also classic. Not much deviation from the definition for this genre. I keep drawing comparisons to Pixel Junk Monsters Ultimate. During that review I said a lot of similar things. You pick where the towers are placed, and you can spend resources on upgrading them, making them stronger or faster, etc. And also be on the lookout for flying enemies. Once again, quite standard. So all of the recognizable hallmarks are here. What sets it apart though? Firstly, you accrue interest on your resources. So the longer you hold out on buying a tower, the more resources you will have. But of course, you risk being too late to stop the wave. But you may get a second chance at stopping them, because secondly, the point of the game is to protect the cores. When an alien reaches the cores, they steal some of them, and take them back to the exit. But they're still up for grabs, and you can still destroy the enemy. And once the alien is dealt with, the cores will slowly float back to the holding area, using the path in spite of its ability to ignore gravity. But that doesn't mean you're out of danger, because usually other aliens now have a shorter distance to travel to claim the core. Thus you have less opportunity to stop them, especially when it's the second or third alien to have it. Kind of like alien football, except instead of being tackled, they get brutalized with heavy ordnance. And the third thing that sets it apart? On most of the levels, the pathways are made up of the panels where you place towers. So instead of having a dedicated wall or barricade for placement, redirection and blockage, the towers themselves are used to channel the alien movement. What's more, a lot of times the levels are designed in such a way that gives you a great deal of creative control in building your alien death route, instead of you just having to deal with a predetermined route. Although fair warning, figuring out how the aliens will behave once you block and alter their route can be quite tricky. So ultimately you may not get that creative with it, and stick to simple approaches you believe will work. Because even though you have checkpoints that you can easily reset to, they tend to be waves apart, and you don't necessarily want to go back that far. But at the very least you can fast forward, There are other thorns in your side, like shielded and stealthed enemies, requiring the correct tower response that cap off the fun tower defense action. Enjoyable, recognizable, yet different in a pleasant and worthwhile way. The levels are different as well. All of them are unlocked from the start, and they have different variants that change the conditions of the level, and increase or decrease the difficulty. Stuff like in this level the cores don't float back, or there's only one core to protect, as well as other available conditions that mix things up. And arguably, this approach instills less tower defense fatigue, because while you do get ranked, you don't earn stars or anything, you earn medals. There isn't an indent that mocks you, waiting to be filled. So while you might try and get the highest possible medal a few times at the start, the fact that you can play any level you want at any time you want, it makes all of them feel incredibly optional. So while a lot of times I try to do my best, sometimes I would just give up and settle for successfully completing the level. Especially on the final level, I was spent. This have fun how you want presentation doesn't necessarily hamper it. Case in point, I actually completed it. That's quite rare for me in this genre. As you can tell from the graph, those are a lot of caveats. But to get the high rankings, you mostly have to protect your cores to get high scores. And I believe the amount of resources you have give bonus points. So I guess you have to do more with less. It's so pleasant when aliens have to move around your tower while constantly in range. Visually, the game has its merits. Sure, the build pads look a bit grimy, too artificial, and the aliens aren't necessarily the most original in design. There's something generically sci-fi about them almost. But the stages look beautiful, and these walkways have a strange beauty. And sometimes you just play over a big gorgeous set piece. And the towers look good, I suppose, but that's mostly due to their color-coded glow that changes based on upgrade level, as well as the beauty of the ordnance flying out of them. I completed the story mode variant of the campaign levels while trying to get gold medals, and that took me 20 hours. Plus I didn't really touch the variant levels, or the bonus levels really. And it is cheap on Steam. 79 Rand full price, 19 Rand 75 on sale. That's 99 cents per hour of gameplay. Excellent! And to download it isn't that bad, as it takes up 986 megabytes on the hard drive. And it works on the Warhorse fairly fine. And stereotypically, I suppose it's okay for kids. It's not bloody, and I suppose the assistant doesn't get that depressed. The game has nice visuals, diverse locations that oftentimes showcase massive human-made constructs, and epic set pieces. Plus the graphics have aged surprisingly well. Sure, some natural terrain looks a bit off, but I suppose the way it's designed, that's less of a problem. Usually the natural stuff is off to the side. The game has good music that instills an epic tone, although there aren't many tracks. The game has good tower defense gameplay, pretty much what you would expect, amplified by unique touches, and a fair bit of polish, I suppose. Plus it gives off slightly less tower defense fatigue, because all levels are unlocked from the start, and the rating system kind of makes doing well feel more optional. But some people prefer the order and purpose delivered by progressing through levels one by one, and besides, I still felt a bit inclined to attempt to do well. Try and get those medals. The benefit came in that it was easier for me to give up and move on to the next level, instead of wallowing in completionist nausea. Plus the game has a lot of content. The campaign levels, bonus levels, and variant levels, they're all there if you want to play that long. And I suppose this content doesn't really deliver more variety to the package. On the maybe side, apart from the assistant, there isn't really a story. But his voice acting is good, and the tale he tells is surprisingly touching. His descent into despair. On the con side, in case you do want to get the medals, it can be quite difficult to get them. At least sometimes it's easy. Figuring out a game plan that will get you there can be a pain of trial and error, especially in later levels. And as usual with this genre, it can be quite frustrating when one simply slips through. But those of you who can better disseminate the nuances of games may fare better. My solution to most issues in the game was to put up more towers. Come on, play it, and hear depressing raspberry-based metaphor.
The raspberries are all gone. So sweet. Everything is gone.
Choip, choip, choip. Choip, choip, choip.